Hi everyone, welcome to the Upswell, What, Why, and How of Upcycled Ingredients. I'm really glad you're here. I'm John Deutsch. I'm a board member emeritus of the Upcycled Food Association, professor of culinary arts and science at Drexel University, where I do upcycled research. I'll give you a little bit of a background of our lab. I want to start by sort of putting this webinar in the context of this phenomenal series that the UFA has put together, sponsored by Seven Sundays. Thanks so much to UFA for arranging this. It's been really, really informative and well attended and great. So this is the third of a 5 webinar series. If you are new to the series, don't worry. There's still 2 more great events coming up over the next 2 weeks. You can see the dates and times there. Next week on the 14th will be Catherine Britton from Where Food Comes From, talking about unexpected uses of upcycled foods, which I know is really interesting to folks. And then our own CEO, Amanda Ohnbring, on November 20th, 5 years to SDG 12.3. Just some housekeeping before we get started. The webinar will be recorded and made available to everyone who's attending, as well as UFA members through the website portal. Please, we want to keep this interactive. I know these panelists, and they are delightful and will want to engage with you. So please don't be shy about using the chat and the Q&A. Use the Q&A feature for your sort of official questions. Feel free to jump in on the chat with comments. And then we'll follow up with our emails and so on. So don't worry if you miss something in the notes. We'll send a follow-up email. So pretty straightforward agenda. I'll let you know a bit about what's to come, and then we'll hear from each panelist and then have a little Q&A session. So I want to start by introducing our panel. We'll go in this order. I introduced myself. I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview of our lab, the Drexel Food Lab, and some of our work with upcycling, including with one of our panelists, 2 of our panelists, really. And then Diego will go first. Diego Simón Herrero, Chief Scientific Officer of Alvinesa Natural Ingredients. Followed by Sue Marshall, founder and CEO of NETZRO, and Dr. Lara Ramdin, who has multiple hats. Sue and Lara are also UFA, UFF board members emerita. Dr. Lara and I are co-chairing the Scientific Council of UFA, and Dr. Ramdin is also Chief Scientist and Ambassador of FoodxClimate. So thanks to everyone on our distinguished panel for taking the time to do this. I think it'll be great. I'm going to just switch to my presentation and give you a little bit of an overview of the Drexel Food Lab next. Okay. So I'll do this quickly. Many of you are familiar with our work, but may not have seen it from the perspective of novel ingredients and applications. So I thought I would take a few minutes to update folks. Just a bit about who we are and what we do. We're Carnegie R1 private research university, and we're unique in having a culinary program at a research university. So we really emphasize the intersection of culinary arts and food science, sort of research chef applications and ingredient applications. So we have the Drexel Food Lab, which is a food product design and culinary innovation lab. We apply culinary arts and science to improve the health of people, planet, and economies. And we do a lot of not highly technical research, but consumer and applications focused work around new product development and commercialization. Our principles are do good, feed well, keep going. So do good means everything we do has some sort of social value. So obviously upcycling is a big part of that. Feed well means we prioritize taste and flavor. And keep going means we're looking for market-driven sustainable solutions. So if you think about these principles, upcycled food obviously fits squarely in the middle of this mission. And we do this through a number of academic programs. We have an undergraduate degree in culinary arts and science, a master's degree in culinary and food science, where students can essentially be full-time in this kind of work. And we also have certificates where students can, from any major, can add this kind of work to their program and work with you, upcycled food folks. And so we have students from design research, data science, medicine, public health, all passionate about food product development, working together with our sort of core team of nutrition, food science, and culinary students. And we always emphasize that our real product are our students, and with a goal of getting them out into the world to become upcycled food entrepreneurs, employees, suppliers, professionals in the network with this kind of orientation. I'll skip a couple of slides. And we do this work with startups through multinationals, nonprofits, government agencies as well. And I'll just show a little video that gives a kind of an overview of our methods and our work with industry around an upcycled food case with a major multinational.
Food waste is a serious problem. Some estimate as much as 40% of food in the US ends up in the trash. That's everything from you tossing out milk that's gone bad to commercial food producers trucking out tons of scraps. That second piece is really where there's a big opportunity for change. And the Food Lab at Drexel University is helping make it happen.
Ours is a practical challenge. It's what do we do with all this, right?
Food producers come to the Drexel Food Lab with a food waste problem, and students will develop commercially viable products, what they call upcycled food.
The project we're doing right now is for Bimbo Bakeries USA, which is the largest bakery in the country. They have about $635 million of bread and other baked goods that are returned to the factory because they've reached their sell-by date.
We get returns from our different customer teams, whether it be grocery stores, convenience stores, or otherwise. And we wanted to find a means for reuse for our products.
The very first thing we do, we observe people in their natural habitat, figure out how they're interacting with bread, how they're using bread. The next thing we do is some consumer insights. We bring consumers into the classroom and do a focus group. Those develop into themes around which we generate new ideas. We prototype, we recheck them with consumers, and by the end of this really rapid 10 weeks, we will have solutions for the company to consider.
It's important for Bimbo Bakeries USA to have a dialogue and to help solve the food waste problem. We're a big company, we have an opportunity to provide a great amount of impact.
Waste is a social construct, so what you do with food determines whether it's food or waste, right? We want to reframe waste to think of it as not recycling food waste, but preventing food waste. We have a long history at Drexel of providing a lot of those ideas to our students.
I'm working on an avocado pit tea. Turns out avocado pits are really high in antioxidants, and I was like, whoa, we're just throwing these away? Like, we can create something out of this. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. We're just not used to using it. That doesn't mean that we can't do other things with them.
The World Bank estimates that by 2050, we're going to have to increase food production by 50% to keep up with the growing population. If you're a farmer, if you're a baker, or whatever you're doing, no one can scale 50%. But then if you factor in that 33 to 40% that we're wasting and chip away at that 50% that we need, then you start to see, okay, maybe this isn't so bad. We're getting a lot of requests from food producers who want to green their habits or make healthier food, but they need help doing that. They need ideas, they need energy, they need talent, and we can work with them to provide that.
Okay, so that's just a little overview on the who we are and what we do. If we can be helpful to anyone as you hear about novel ingredients, working them into products, sensory testing, getting a sense of consumer feedback, commercialization help, and so on, we'd love to discuss. So our first speaker is Diego. I'm going to hand it over to you. We'll hear from 3 unique perspectives on novel ingredients and applications. As I said earlier, please feel free to use the Q&A feature, and I'll try to sort of moderate if there's something pressing, we'll answer right after each speaker. But otherwise, we'll open it up for more of a fulsome discussion at the end. So, Diego, take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. Well, my name is Diego Herrero, the Chief Scientific Officer at Alvinesa Natural Ingredients. So perhaps first, before talking about some points, it's important to talk a little bit about Alvinesa Natural Ingredients. What is Alvinesa Natural Ingredients? We are a company located in Spain. We are located in La Mancha, in the south of Madrid. We are located in the biggest wine production region all over the world. And essentially, at Alvinesa, we are the leaders in the whole industry in the production of upcycling product coming from byproduct of the industry of olive oil and of wine. So essentially what we do, we take the byproduct that are generated from the wine production, essentially pomasses, lees, and also we are taking the byproduct from the olive oil production. The name we can say is like olive juice extract, something like that, and we are able to become this byproduct into highly valuable natural extract. So essentially, this is our business. And right now, we are upcycling around the half of the total pomace that is generated in Spain. You have to take into account that Spain, together to Italy and France, are the 3 main countries in the production of wine, just to provide you an idea about the huge capability volume that we have in Alvinesa. Because of that, we are the biggest producer of this kind of extract, coming from grape and coming from olive. So right now, we are going to try to provide a response to different questions. So the first thing that we could talk about is, for me, what are upcycled ingredients? So I'm going to try to provide my own definition. So for me, upcycling is much more than recycling. For me, recycling means that the final product that you get is more or less exactly the same that the initial product. For instance, when you are recycling a polymer, polyurethane or polyethylene, in my previous experience as a professor at university, I did my PhD in this kind of recycling. I took the byproduct coming from the polyurethane, and then by means of glycolysis, I was able to generate a polyol with the goal of obtaining a new polyurethane. So for me, this is recycling. But upcycling, according to my view, it's much more than this. For me, when we say that in Alvinesa we are global leader in the production of natural upcycling products, I mean that for me, an upcycling product is a product with more value than the product from which the byproduct came. I mean, imagine we are taking the byproduct coming from the wine industry, this pomace. So what we do, we extract this pomace, and we obtain from the pomace natural polyphenol, flavin-friol, and the value in the business of this grapeseed extract is higher than the value of the initial wine. So for that reason, I say that for me, upcycling is when the product that you are able to produce, in this case our extract, present more value than the product from which the byproduct initially came. So for me, that could be my definition of upcycling. The second question is, where does it come from? So I'm going to talk about my experience as Chief Scientific Officer in Alvinesa, as I was the person who created this division of health and nutrition into Alvinesa. We essentially, our upcycling ingredients are coming from byproduct of the wine industry and of the olive oil industry. Obviously, you can find some other raw material, but in our case, we are the global leader in this couple of byproduct, olive and grape. How it is made? Well, the whole process can be very complex. In order to be able to explain it in just 5 to 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to provide the gist of the process. So essentially, what we do, we take the pomace that, as I said, is the byproduct from the production of wine. When the wine is produced, when the grape is pressed, you get the mass, and then the mass is converted into wine. So the byproduct is the pomace. Can be red pomace or white pomace. So what we do, we take this pomace in fresh and ferment it because fermentation provides a decrease in the polyphenol content. So we take the pomace and we put in contact in counter current with water. We only use water because some other producers are using ethanol or are using ethyl acetate. In our case, as our name indicates, we have Alvinesa natural ingredients. So we have preferred, that was how I designed the process, just to use water. So we put the pomace with water in counter current. So that way, what we are doing, we are extracting from the pomace the polyphenol. What are these kind of polyphenol? Flavonoids polyphenol. Flavanthiol, monomer as catechin, epicatechin, dimer, trimer, oligomer, proanthocyanidin, and PAX, and also anthocyanidin kinds of polyphenol, malvidin, cyanidin, and so on. So what happened? The pomace is advancing that way in contacting with water in counter current. So the pomace is depleting step by step, and the water is acquiring step by step the natural compound. So at the end of the line, we are able to obtain a raw liquid extract. What we do with this raw liquid extract, we purify to increase the concentration in polyphenol. And how we do this? By means of physical processes, mainly a combination of absorption resins with membranes. By means of the absorption resins, we are able to capture the polyphenol, and then we elute only with water. So we are able to get a purified grape extract. Then we increase the dry matter till 40%, 30 to 40%, by means of vacuum evaporation or by means of nanofiltration. And then once we have this dry matter, we use the technology of a spray dryer to convert to become the liquid in powder. So this is the standard way in which we are producing our natural polyphenols. More, what are the advantages of other ingredients? Well, imagine it's not the same. For instance, we are able to produce natural colorant, again, from pomace. It's not the same, the color that we are producing, that, for example, if we compare with the black carrot, because in the case of the black carrot, you are not getting the byproduct. In that case, you are using the food. You are like destroying the food in order to get the extract. However, in our case, we are using the byproduct from the wine. So we are doing upcycling. This is quite a different thing. And also because of the way that we are extracting and because of the way that we are doing the purification, we are able to achieve and surpass polyphenolic content. And of this way, we are able to reach a lot of different verticals, a lot of different industry. That is next with the next question. How it is used in application? Well, what are the main areas in which our natural extract of olive and grape can be used? Well, in a lot of different applications. The first vertical I would like to talk about is food supplement, nutraceutical. Why? Because this kind of polyphenol coming from grape, this flavanthiol, this anthocyanidin, we have done different in vitro and in vivo studies, and we have demonstrated that this product could have some benefit regarding cardiovascular health, for instance, preventing the LDL oxidation or to reduce the blood pressure to avoid atherosclerosis, or even some benefit in cognitive health, in that case, because the combination of anthocyanin coming from the red pomace and flavanotriol coming from the seeds of the white pomace. Moreover, this year, we are carrying out a couple of clinical studies for our brand ingredient Vintera, that is our brand for grape, in that case for cardiovascular health, and we are also carrying out a study for our Itolive, that is our product, our brand for olive, in that case for people with prediabetes. So a lot of application in this thing of the food supplement, nutraceutical, because we have our own in vitro, in vivo, and also clinical study, and also because if we take open literature, it can be demonstrated that this product with this content of polyphenol can help to prevent different pathologies or different diseases. But our strategies are not only about nutraceutical or about functional food, even food supplement, but also we are very, very active in the food protection thing. So for me, what is food protection? For me, food protection is when you try to replace synthetic antioxidant by natural antioxidant and preservative. I'm talking about replacing, for instance, BHT, butyrhydroxytoluene, or sulfites, or nitrates, or sodium ascorbate by our natural extract. In that case, our brand name is BT Fresh for grape and Olea Fresh for olive. We have really, really great result in this regard. For instance, in our last study, we did the study in beef hamburgers that you know it's a very perishable matrix, and we were able to compare how it works 200 ppm of our product, BT Fresh, this upcycling ingredient coming from byproduct from the wine production, against different synthetic antioxidants, butyrhydroxytoluene, sulfites, sodium ascorbate. The doses of our ingredient, 200 ppm, the doses of the synthetic antioxidant, more than the double, 450 ppm. And the best result, in order to avoid the peroxidation of lipid, the rancidity, were obtained with our natural extract. That is a great result, because normally when you compare the natural antioxidant with the synthetic one, you normally need a much higher concentration of the natural one in comparison to the synthetic. However, in our case, by means of using less than the half of the doses, we were able to improve the result obtained in the regard of the minimum quantity of NDA that is related with the lipid peroxidation in comparison to the synthetic antioxidant. Well, apart from food supplement, apart from food protection, we are also very active in enology, because we are also producers of tannins. These tannins can help to maintain a proper color in the wines, and also to provide this very important astringency depending on the kind of wine. Moreover, we are also producer of extract for the animal feed industry, because as I have explained, Alvinesa is a global leader and we are able to produce huge volume, and in animal feed there are huge volumes. So we are able to sell this natural extract to the feed industry, in that case for replace the vitamin E. And last but not least, we are also into the flavor thing. We are also selling to the industry, mainly in the United States and also in Europe, our wine concentrate. So what are our wine concentrate? Is taking the wine, removing the alcohol, and with the rest, by means of using different concentration processes, vacuum and membranes, trying to get the best of the wine in terms of organoleptic characteristics, but without the negative impact of the alcohol. So these are the main verticals in which our product can be applied. And last but not least, where do I go to learn more? Well, in that case, I recommend you to visit our website at Alvinesa. And also you can find more information from us attending to different shows. For instance, last week we were participating in Supply Side Waste in Vegas. That is the most important show in the food supplement in the United States. In a couple of weeks, we are going to be exhibiting in the Food Ingredient Europe in Frankfurt. That is the most important show regarding food in Europe. Then in May, April, we are going to be in Barcelona assisting to VitaFood, that is the global leader show in food supplement in Europe. This used to be in Geneva, but the committee had decided to move to Barcelona. And also in July, we will be in IFT Force in Chicago. That is probably one of the most important shows regarding food. So more or less, this is where you can find more information coming from us. So this is all from my side, just to be sure that we are going to be on time. Thank you, Jan.
It's great. Thank you, Diego. It's a fascinating product. I look forward to playing with it, or series of products, I should say. We had one clarifying question that maybe you could take now, because it's specific to your presentation, which is what kind of fermentation are you using? Are you adding any additional sugar or salt before fermenting?
We are not fermenting. We have not fermented the wine because the pomace. Because if we fermented this fresh pomace, we are going to have a problem regarding the polyphenol content. So what we do, we take the pomace in fresh without fermentation, and we carry out the water before the fermentation in order to get the maximum containing polyphenol possible.
Okay. Sue, we'll hand it over to you, our next presenter.
Thank you, John, and great presentation, Diego. I loved it. My mind is that's deep. I'll give you a little bit more simple here, so we'll go a little bit not so deep science. My name is Sue Marshall. I am the founder and CEO of NETZRO. NETZRO is a food upcycling platform. It includes technology, so I do have some really cool equipment, and that's what I'll kind of fit in today. After Diego's conversation, it'll kind of make sense. So if you take a look at equipment to do this great work, what we really want to do is have equipment close to where the byproducts. So in Diego's, he was talking about the wine pumice. So the beauty about NETZRO's equipment, it's agnostic for the most part. It can work on any kind of fruit pumice, grains, seed pumice, anything that is in a manufacturing setting. Like Diego's, like a winery or a brewery, a distillery, oils, they're going to have this pumice as he spoke about. So what we do is we have equipment that is right there on site. That's what it's meant to do. So instead of a dumpster or some other kind of totes where most of this mash will go, it will be in a hopper and go right into the equipment. So to give you a little bit of a visual of what this might look like, we talk a lot about flash freezing. That seems to be a thing where you're just taking something that's food oriented and you're just stabilizing it quickly and freezing it. This process is similar, except for it's completely dry. Flash dry is what I like to say, using infrared heat. So it's a heat mechanism. In doing that, we take whatever is there and we just literally stabilize it. We have a kill step, so it's now certifiable human consumption. And it's ready to go and be stored. So think of it as extending shelf life, 24 months, not a problem. It's at that point, it's 90% dry. And a lot of times it'll look very good. It's still whole foods. It might still look like grain. It might look like pieces of greens and from a juice plant, pieces of fruits. Like Diego was saying, that the wine pumice will turn to pieces. So that is what people then can work with. Diego talked about fermenting. John does a lot of this work, and so does Lara, with extracting things and further fermenting. So in my world, what I'm doing is trying to capture thousands of pounds an hour. And a lot of these facilities, they can do 5, 8, 10 tons a day of this pumice. And so what we really want to do is take all the water out, make it safe, make it ready for further work from all these great people. So that's what we do. You can use that, those pieces in food as is. And so then we stay closer to whole food versus all the other deep science that happens. It's a very inexpensive process compared to what typically has to happen with byproducts. So we're literally just applying the heat, stabilizing. We do have data that certifies that it's safe, which is very important in the food world. Whoever's going to take that product next and do whatever they want to do with it must have the data to prove it's safe. So we're extending, powering forward the value of those byproducts. And in a lot of cases, we're talking about thousands of pounds. And that really is where the problem lies for a manufacturer, is in volumes of this and all the water. So we went into this back 5 years ago. It's a 5-year anniversary, and taking a look at this IP and building our first generation of equipment. We've been hosted with breweries, distilleries, and other food type manufacturers to do that pilot work with what they have. And then from there, we've been able to do a lot of different fun projects, like with John and other people, to take those pieces and do further work with them. So we have a really good handle on 15 different byproducts we've worked on. Most of those are commercialized. You could buy those from us. But the really exciting part about NETZRO this past year is we started selling the equipment. We've commercialized a generation of equipment that handles 800 to 1,000 pounds an hour, depending on the moisture level, and has a small footprint that you can put in the, in the facility. So we've just started that. We're working. We have a manufacturer in Ireland that has started, as of today, building the first one for Europe. And then we do have a manufacturer we're in negotiations with in the US. And they're a big manufacturer of food equipment. So that's really what we want to do, is get our tool into the hands of folks that already sell a lot of these types of equipment into food and beverage manufacturing. And then at that point, we can be capturing all that food waste byproduct, the food asset. It's an asset, and make sure it's available for other people, all these great people, to do this great work. So that's what we're doing. We're really excited. We tend to do pilot testing. So if somebody's out there and says, I make this type of juice, or I make this type of oil, and you might have mash, that's the kind of projects that we'd like to take a look at. We do get a lot of grant funding to do that kind of work. So that's definitely available in some states, and I can help look that up as well. And you can get a hold of me at Sue at, and it's NETZRO.us. NETZRO.us. We have quite a few videos on there. You can take a look and see the equipment actually doing its superpower. And then if you have any questions, you can email me, and I'm happy to let people know what we've worked on and what we're looking forward to working on. There are some lists out there. We get a lot of calls to Diego's work and to Lara's work about further fermenting and extracting. So we've had a lot of calls recently this past year on taking the fermenting route, so they get those pieces, rehydrate them again, and start their work. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. We had a lot of these upcycled dried grains and this type of thing into bakery over the last 5 years. Now we're seeing them put back in, into the fermenting category. So to me, that is all great, because then we can take this great food byproducts and extend their life and use them versus just not doing much with them. So that's what I have. If anyone has any questions, happy to answer one or two now, and then we'll turn it over to Lara.
See any questions in the Q&A right now? So maybe let's turn it over to Lara, and then if anyone has questions, a reminder, pop them into the Q&A, or feel free also to use the chat. Sue, I put your email in the chat, and mine as well. And Diego and Lara, feel free to add yours. All right, Dr. Ramdin.
Okay, so today I'm really wearing my UFA board member and scientific council hat. And one of the things that we talk about a lot, Jonathan and I, is the advancement in the science and understanding of what upcycled ingredients can do. And actually Sue alluded to it, because I would say I've been involved in upcycling and upcycled ingredients for about 7 or 8 years. It started when I worked for a beer company, and the beer company was looking to create additional revenue from their waste stream, which was spent grain, of course. But that has continued throughout the last couple of jobs that I've had. I also worked for Dole, where we were looking to upcycle waste bananas. And all of these processes, all of this upcycled material has involved processing, right? Whether that be drying at a most sort of fundamental level, but also extraction, and extraction by filtration, but also by extraction by enzymatic hydrolysis. And what we're seeing actually in the scientific arena is an advancement in the methods used to extract functional ingredients from upcycled byproducts and waste streams. So Diego obviously has his specific process, but we're if you take spent grain, for example, which is I guess the material that I've probably worked on the longest, it's more than fiber and protein. obviously it's traditionally mostly fiber and protein, but even within those fiber and protein fractions, there's further extraction that can go on in the fiber between soluble and insoluble, and then in the protein. You know, in my previous life, I was looking at how to get down to that amino acid level using fractionation and enzymatic hydrolysis. I think the potential for upcycled ingredients is huge, and we collectively right now, this conversation here is really only scratching the surface. What I will say is, and then we talk a lot about this as scientists as well, and there's a lot of pockets of activity going on in various different places across the US, but also in Europe. The challenge, of course, is if you're doing extra processing of a material that would otherwise be a waste or a byproduct, is that in fact counterintuitive when you think about the carbon footprint? Because we're all in this, obviously, to divert food waste from landfill and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore an upcycled ingredient has a certain carbon footprint. But if you're using resources, energy, etc., in order to create that ingredient from that waste stream or byproduct, where does the trade-off begin and end? That's one of the key challenges that the scientific community is facing at the moment. If you think about all the transformative processes that are being used on these waste materials, whether that be fractionation, enzymatic hydrolysis, fermentation. There's a company in Europe, which Green Spot, which is actually up for the Earthshot Prize, and Nina Granucci is the CEO, and they have an ingredient called Ferment Up, and that's fermented, that comes from fermented spent grain. So as a scientific community, we're talking about where the trade-off is. I would say also Sue and Diego represent commercialized businesses. A lot of what's going on within the science arena is yet to be commercialized. So one of the challenges, and Sue will share this with me, I'm sure, one of the challenges is commercializing, but then getting scale, because the challenge, these ingredients that we're producing from waste streams and byproducts are often more expensive versus the standard, quote unquote, equivalent. So if you're in the ingredient world and you're trying to sell ingredients to customers, it's one of the biggest conversations that we have, right? About how to, why should we be using this ingredient over here versus this ingredient over here, because this is 1x and this is 1.5 and 2x. As a scientific community, we've not solved that yet. And my hope would be that as more and more people investigate the use of some of these existing processes on waste streams and byproducts, that the processes themselves become cheaper and become more energy and resource efficient. I think that's obviously where we want the science to go. One of the last things I'll say is that the reason why we feel passionately about setting up this scientific council as part of UFF is that there is so much going on in this space, both in industry, but also in academia, that's not being captured and not being made use of. So we hope through this scientific council to create a place for all the science around upcycling to be housed. And with that, all the students, the grad students, the research fellows that maybe don't have a home that are working in upcycling to come to us and actually accelerate the upcycled movement, because it's 5 years old and we're still 5 years old is pretty young, and we've done a lot in the next 5 years. But in order for us to, for all the businesses that are involved in this organized in this industry association, in order for them to survive, we need acceleration of the movement, right? Adoption, whilst I think people understand upcycling in their hearts, practically and fiscally, we have seen a much slower adoption than we would like. So by bringing the scientific community closer to the industry association, we're hoping that we can shortcut some of those development times and some of those times that lead from concept and idea to commercialization, and therefore get acceleration. And that's where I'll leave it, Jonathan.
Excellent. So now we have time for questions for any or all of the panelists, or more of an open discussion. I don't see any in the chat or the Q&A. So
I would love
I
to
would-
just go on top of what Lara was saying about
yeah,
getting
that's great.
costs down. And I agree, and all of us have been talking about that, because at the end of the day, these are large volumes that are available to us, but it has to work into the market at price. In my arena, I'm working more on commodities. So yes, I have to get that price per pound down, and it is down compared to regular ingredients. But I'm also selling bushels of grain. I'm selling bushels of upcycled grain. So my work won't stop until I get that price per pound
Right.
and down to a more of a commodity level. So then the rest of the market can actually use that and do what they need to do to make it an ingredient in whatever post step they want to do, so that we can get that price within reason, so that more products can access those ingredients. So and I love the idea of all of us coming into this collaborative arena together, because that is the only way it's going to be done, is if we're all working together. So thanks for bringing that up, Lara.
There is a question in the chat, Jonathan, about what's the best practice to incorporate upcycled ingredients into formulations.
Yeah,
I
I
can
saw that.
my own experience, and then you can
That'd be great.
maybe
Yeah, and I can
add
take a
on to
stab at
that.
one too. Yeah.
I have I'm an application scientist, if you like. My career has always been involved in taking something and applying it to a product. And I would say that certainly upcycled ingredients are very unique in the way they behave, not only when it comes to the chemistry of formulation, but also sensorially. So the first thing you need to know is that you're going to be, if it's a green banana powder, or it's spent grain flour, whatever it is, it is always going to behave differently. I think the key, certainly to a spent grain flour, which is predominantly fiber and protein, is to understand the chemistry, which means that that particular flour is going to be incredibly hydrophilic, so it's going to love water. So in any system, when you add it to any system, it's going to compete for water with other things in that system. I think when you know that up front, then the way in which you treat it and the way in which you add it into your system is different. The other thing I would say is also that obviously we want to try and get as much upcycled ingredients into systems as possible. The standard, I want to come back to the standard for a minute, because I think that's also part and parcel of what the scientific committee will uphold. The standard for being an upcycled certified product is on purpose set at a 10% inclusion level, because the upcycle, and that was done extensively, which I believe Jonathan was part of the conversation, together with many other esteemed experts. It was set at that level for a reason, not least because of cost, but also because fundamentally these ingredients do take some working into your system. And I think broadly, to think about this, imagine if all food systems included 10% upcycled ingredients. Imagine what the acceleration and the adoption would look like, but also imagine what the food system would look like. So the other thing I would say is, as much as we want, a high level of inclusion of upcycled ingredients in all our food, I think the minimum has been set at 10% for a reason, and I would always be starting with somewhere between 10 and 20%. Over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think those are great guidelines. I think one of the things we get a lot, as upcycling has become sexy, thanks to all of your work, the association, the certification, we get more and more entrepreneurs who say, I'm looking to launch an upcycled ingredient, and that's wonderful, but I think we have to prioritize the end product and the functionality first, and then look at what's the best ingredient for the situation. So sometimes, it's a square peg in a round hole, and something could be better served with a conventional ingredient. And we never want the upcycled ingredient to compromise the finished product. We want it to highlight it, right? So really understanding these ingredients and being able to take advantage of their qualities that they're going to lend seems a lot more effective than just saying, I need to do this because it's upcycled, right? So really understanding that and putting the work into it in terms of sensory, and I agree, with cost as well. I think people are understanding now that upcycled ingredients cost more, but there has to be a value to it, right? And so it has to enhance the marketing, the perception, and the finished product. So keeping all of those imbalances has been a challenge. Answers have been flying in, so we're gonna try to.
You mean questions?
Get to
Questions are
ideally
flying
all
in.
of them, maybe with faster. I am long-winded. So one that could be for anyone on the panel. What novel ingredients are you seeing emerge or have more potential yet to be explored?
I'll go ahead and just speak on that. There are anything with proteins, but also like greens. Greens are right now, people are talking about it because a lot of times they're doing this, green and juices. And so you have a lot of kale. Those things are still really good to use a second time. Same with just general fruit pumice. So I'm seeing a lot of taking that and putting it into as toppers and sprinkles on things, making coatings. And the flavors are fabulous still too. So we still have that flavor profile. So anything like that that can still carry flavor profiles is what I'm typically asked about.
There are two questions specifically for Diego, Jonathan, by the way, in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'll get to those next, but any other comments on what novel ingredients are emerging from the other panelists?
I mean, I will talk a couple of, so there are two sources of resistant starch that comes from waste streams. One is potato waste stream. So our friends at Solnal have commercialized resistant starch. Resistant starch is a natural prebiotic. So it's actually really valuable when it comes to managing people's health and public health. It's a relatively inexpensive ingredient if it comes from waste potatoes, but also you find it in green banana powder. So it's certainly something that we were looking at when I was working at Dole. Of course, our largest problem was our banana waste. So anything that's green banana related or potato starch related is a source of resistant starch, which is a natural prebiotic. And we're seeing a wider adoption, and I was just at Supply Side West actually, seeing a wider adoption of resistant starches in products. In fact, every other booth that I bumped into had something to do with, the gut microbiome and prebiotics and probiotics and now postbiotics. But what I would say is, if you want to cut through all of that, resistant starch from potato or banana is fantastically good for your gut microbiome and your overall health.
Yeah, so as Lara pointed out, there's a couple of questions for Diego. One is Diego's using olive and grape pumice. What are other bigger groups of pumices that could be valorized? Is there a difference in which pumices are produced in Europe versus the US?
Yeah. But before taking this question, I would like to remark the very important point that Lara has done in his part, because she has said that it's very important. Okay, this thing of upcycling, but it's also critical point, the thing of the energy and the carbon footprint, because it's totally true. Imagine if you are doing a great product, very purified, polyphenol by means of Folin or whatever method, but you are wasting a lot of energy. I mean, you are losing the point. So I would like to remark that at Alvinesa, we do upcycling, but in a very circular economic way, because what we do, we take the pomace, and once we have obtained from the pomace the polyphenol, the colorant, the alcohol, all the natural colorants, all the tartaric acid, all these things, and also the grapeseed oil, once the pomace is totally depleted, we use that pomace to get our energy, because we employ this pomace as biomass, and we also have our own photovoltaic park. So in summary, we can say that around the 97 to 98% of all the requirements of energy that we need to produce are self-produced. So we have independence of the consumption of fossil fuel. So what does it mean? That we are able to produce this upcycling of product, taking into account the main principle of circular economy. And because our huge scale, and because we are not paying for gas, for instance, we are able to offer to the market upcycling product, but very, very price competitive in comparison even to synthetic alternatives. So this is one of the most important points for us, that we are able to produce following the circular economy, and because we have our own energy, we can offer the product not only for the traditional business, for the grape extracts that are food supplement, this thing of the powder in capsule, but also in the food industry and animal feed, that is our business that require quality, but volumes are prices very competitive. Because we are producing, that was some of the point that Sue and Lara have also done, it's okay, this is not a cycling product, but at the end of the day, if you are only able to produce 10 kilograms, 100 kilograms, 200 kilograms, you are not going to be able to achieve the food or the feed industry. But in Alvinesa, we are producing 100 tons, 200 tons, 1,000 tons of this kind of extract. So this is very, very important. Depending on the product, for instance, if we are talking about colorant, one typical order for us is 25,000 kilograms, 25 tons. So we are talking about producing huge quantity. That is very important. Regarding the question of the different impomaces, absolutely. Depending on the variety, the profile that you get is totally different. So it's not the same when you produce an extract with a raw material coming from France, that a raw material coming from California, that a raw material coming from Spain, and it's not the same the center of Spain, that the east of Spain, the south or the north. However, you can mimic the profile by means of technology. So imagine if in France, the pomace normally has more monomers, for instance, in Alvinesa, we are able to mimic that profile by means of using different membranes. In France, these people has more containing monomer, so we can create a similar profile using a different pomace by means of technology and being really cost effective. Then the next question is, working in a global industry while based in Europe, can you talk about where your work takes Alvinesa globally? Well,
just to interrupt you for a second, Diego, I think this will be the last question time-wise, so I'll just ask everyone for a couple wrap-up remarks following this question. Oh, but go ahead, Diego, and yeah, if you could answer this question, then after that we'll wrap up.
So our main market, we can say that is right now Europe, but also we have some really good sales in mainly for olive in Asia. We have huge account in Asia, in that case mainly for olive, and also at the United States we are starting to do very good number, mainly with the wine concentrate, because you know, to buy wine that implies taxes and so on. These people, for example, at United States, the huge companies are deciding to buy from us the wine concentrate. They have the benefit from wine without buying the alcohol. So essentially, okay, we are located in Europe, is where is our headquarters, but Alvinesa has also some other plant in Chile and also in Argentina. So in Argentina, because of that way, we are able to receive raw material in the 12th month of the year. But yeah, our main business is Europe, but also Asia and also United States. So we are totally in global.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I want to give any of our panelists the opportunity for the last word on novel ingredients, applications, the future of upcycling. Any concluding thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to leave people with the thought. I think Diego mentioned circular, somebody did with circular food system. So not only is this giving us a chance to take the end of the food supply chain and making it a whole new food revolution, which is what we've been talking about today, but it really does make a circular food system. And I can tell you with my work with farmers and regenerative agriculture practices, they love the idea of what we're doing to close loop that and power forward all the work they've put into these food products in the beginning to make sure we get full use out of them. So as an agricultural community and farmers, they support what we do. So we'll just all keep right at it.
Lara or Diego, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think reduction of food waste is not going to go away. We talk about the reduction of food waste being one of the dumbest problems that we have, both globally and in particular in the US. So, and in order to do that effectively, and Europe is making great strides, by the way, and certainly countries like the UK and France have doubled down on the reduction of food waste and will meet their goals. Meanwhile, the rest of us are still faced with 38% of all food being wasted. Upcycling, I think the important thing is that upcycling is a yes and, right? As with anything in the food system, there's no one thing that is going to solve food security, supply, feeding hungry people, making sure that it has the right carbon footprint, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Upcycling is a tool along with other tools that we need, and we need all of them, right? And so everybody that's on this call and everybody that's committed to the upcycling movement needs to carry on doing what they're doing. But we do need more, I would say, active collaboration. So in my world, I have heard that word a lot, and I've heard that used many different ways. And when I say active collaboration, I mean real partnerships that create win-win in order to accelerate the development of certain things, both that are commercial but also at scale, so therefore it's at the right price. And there are very few of those, and we need to see more of those.
Great. Diego, would you like the last word?
Only to say thank you, John, for inviting me and Alvinesa.
Okay.
And a pleasure being here discussing with Sue and with Lara. Great presentation from both
Great.
sides.
I'd like to thank all the panelists. I'd like to thank all the attendees, and I'd like to thank Amanda and Bo for facilitating this and bringing us all together. So thank you so much, and please keep in touch.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Nice day.
you. Bye.
Thank you.